If I lost everything today, my money, my possessions, my status, I know exactly how I'd start over and build wealth again. And it wouldn't take luck. It would take principles. In the next hour, I'm going to lay out a clear, practical blueprint, how to build wealth from nothing. You'll learn the principles I would use if I had to start over. Setting your sail with the right philosophy. Practicing the daily disciplines that create success. Understanding the law of sowing and reaping. Setting goals that pull you forward. Choosing associations that shape your future. And committing to lifelong self-education. If you've ever felt stuck, broke, or without direction, this will give you a way forward. Because wealth isn't a mystery. It's a set of principles. And principles work for anyone who applies them. I know how frustrating it is to work hard and see little progress. To give years of effort and still feel like you're stuck in place. I've been there. But what I discovered is that wealth isn't built by accident. It's built by design. And design begins with philosophy. The way you think, the way you decide, the way you discipline yourself. Most people think they need more money to make money, but that's not true. What they need is a better philosophy and a few simple disciplines. That's what I want to share with you in this session. So here's what we'll cover together. First, we'll talk about philosophy, the foundation of all wealth. Then we'll move to discipline, the daily bridge between intention and results. We'll study the law of sowing and reaping, the guarantee that your harvest always matches your planting. We'll dive into goals, how to design instead of drift. We'll look at associations, how the people you spend time with determine your future. And finally, we'll finish with self-education, why working harder on yourself than you do on your job is the ultimate key to building wealth. Along the way, I'll share stories, including how I couldn't buy a $2 box of cookies and the lessons that turned my life around. Stay with me, because if you'll apply these principles, you'll see how anyone can build wealth from nothing. Here's something most people never understand. They think wealth starts with money. They believe the first step to getting rich is to already have some. But let me tell you what I discovered the hard way. Wealth doesn't begin with money at all. It begins with philosophy. It begins with the way you think, the way you see the world, the conclusions you come to, the beliefs you accept. And if your philosophy is wrong, you can hand a man all the money in the world, and sooner or later, he'll lose it. But if his philosophy is right, you can take away everything he owns, and before long, he'll build it all back again. Because it wasn't the money that made him wealthy. It was his philosophy. I remember when I was 25, I had nothing to show for 6 years of hard work. I was broke. I owed money. I was behind on my promises. And I was embarrassed. I'd been working every day. I was sincere. I was trying hard, but I didn't have a dime in my pocket. I used to look around at people who were successful and say, well, it's the economy. It's the company I'm in. It's the government. It's the taxes. It's the wind blowing against me. That was my philosophy. It was always the wind. The winds of circumstance. The winds of politics. The winds of luck. And as long as I kept blaming the wind, nothing changed. Then one day, my mentor asked me to make a list of every reason why I wasn't doing well. So I did. I wrote down the economy, the company, my lack of education, the weather, the government. It was a long list. When I showed it to him, he looked it over and said, Jim, there's only one problem with this list. You ain't on it. And that was the day everything changed. That was the day I tore up my excuse list and realized the problem wasn't the wind. The problem was the set of my sail. The problem was my philosophy. Now, why does this matter so much? Because the same winds blow on all of us. Opportunity, difficulty, change, tragedy. Some people face them and rise. Others face them and sink. What's the difference? Not the wind. The difference is how they set their sail. The difference is their philosophy. Two people can go through the same storm. One is broken by it. Two people can start with nothing. One spends their life in poverty. The other builds wealth and freedom. What makes the difference? Not money, not luck, not the wind. It's philosophy. So let me ask you a simple question. How have you set your sail? Have you been drifting, waiting for the wind to change? Or are you willing right now to reset your philosophy, to take responsibility, to stop blaming, to stop wishing it were easier, and start wishing you were better? That single shift is the foundation of wealth. Because wealth doesn't come to those who wait for the wind. Wealth comes to those who adjust their sail. That's powerful enough on its own, but combine it with what I'm about to share next, and you'll see how quickly you can begin to reset your philosophy in 30 days. With practical steps, you can start immediately, even if you've got nothing today. Now, once you see that philosophy is the foundation of all wealth, the natural question is this: how do you change it? How do you reset the sail? Because if your philosophy has been shaped for years by excuses, by blame, by doubt, by wrong ideas about money and success, you might think it takes years to turn it around. But let me encourage you, it doesn't. Philosophy can be reset in a day. It can be reshaped in a month. One new idea can change everything. One decision to stop blaming the wind and start setting your sail can alter the entire direction of your life. I know, because that's exactly what happened to me. At 25, when I was broke and struggling, I didn't suddenly get more money. I didn't suddenly get more time. I didn't suddenly get a better job. What I got was a better way of thinking. I decided that instead of wishing, I would work. Instead of blaming, I would learn. Instead of waiting, I would act. That shift didn't fill my pockets overnight, but it gave me the one thing I needed most: a new direction. And once the direction changed, the results followed. So how do you reset your philosophy practically? Here's the first step. Start by paying attention to your own thoughts. For the next 30 days, I want you to become a student of what runs through your mind and out of your mouth. Carry a notebook, keep a journal, and every time you catch yourself saying, I can't, I don't, I never, I wish, write it down. Don't edit it, don't judge it, just capture it. Because what you're really capturing is the philosophy that's been steering your ship, often without you realizing it. And here's the truth: you can't change what you don't identify. Once you've caught it, challenge it. Hold those words up to the light and ask, is this true? Is this serving me? Where did I even get this idea? You'll be surprised how many of your guiding beliefs were handed to you by someone else: a parent, a teacher, a friend, the culture around you. And yet, for years, you've been living by them as though they were laws of nature. They're not. They're choices. And if you don't like where those choices have taken you, you can choose differently. Then comes the most important part: replace the old with the new. Every time you catch yourself with a philosophy that limits you, replace it with one that lifts you. Cross out I can't and write I'm learning. Cross out I don't have time and write I make time for what matters. Cross out I wish it were easier and write I wish I were better. That last one changed my life. For years, I prayed that life would calm down, that problems would shrink, that opportunities would fall into my lap. And then I heard the truth. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems. Wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenge. Wish for more wisdom. That single idea turned me from a drifter into a designer. And here's the beauty: if you'll practice this for 30 days, you'll already begin to see sprouts of change. No, you won't be a millionaire by October, but you'll notice your conversations shifting. You'll notice your energy rising. You'll notice your confidence growing. And that proof will be priceless. Because once you've seen that you can change your philosophy, you'll know you can change your life. So don't underestimate the power of a single month. 30 days of new thinking can create 30 years of new results. Wealth begins with philosophy, and philosophy can be reset, starting today, starting with you. Now, once the sail is reset, the next question is, how do you keep the ship steady when the winds are against you? And the answer is discipline, the bridge between goals and wealth. And that's what we'll talk about next. Now, once you've reset your philosophy, once you've turned the sail in a better direction, the next question is this: how do you make sure you stay the course? Because it's one thing to dream, it's one thing to decide, it's one thing to say, I'm ready to start over, but it's another thing to hold steady day after day, week after week, until the harvest comes. And the answer, my friend, is discipline. Discipline is the bridge between your goals and your accomplishments, between your dreams and your reality. Without it, everything else collapses. With it, everything else is possible. But here's what I discovered, and it's a truth I've repeated for decades because it's so important. Everyone must choose between two pains: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. There's no escaping pain. Life will hand it to you one way or the other. But here's the good news. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. Think about it. What does discipline cost? A little time, a little discomfort, the small inconvenience of saying no when it would be easier to say yes, the effort to wake up a bit earlier, to save a few dollars instead of spending them, to read a book instead of wasting an evening, to make the extra call, to write in the journal when you're tired. That's discipline. It weighs ounces. You feel it in the moment, but it's light. It builds you. It strengthens you. It sets you free. Now, compare that with regret. Regret is heavy. Regret is waking up 10 years from now and realizing you wasted opportunities. Regret is standing at the end of the season with an empty field because you never planted the seed. Regret is saying, if only I had started sooner, if only I had tried harder, if only I had followed through. Regret weighs tons, and it doesn't go away quickly. Discipline stings in the short term, but regret burns for a lifetime. Let me give you a picture. Carrying discipline is like wearing a small backpack. Sure, it's a little weight on your shoulders, but you get stronger with it. You grow accustomed to it. It even helps you stand taller. But regret is like dragging a chain with a boulder tied to the end. At first you think, I can handle this. It's not too bad. But the years go by. The chain gets heavier. The boulder grows larger. And one day you find you can barely move under the weight of it. That's the difference. Ounces now or tons later. And here's the danger. Neglect feels harmless at first. Skip the workout today, and nothing breaks. Spend the dollar instead of saving it, and no one calls you out. Watch television instead of reading, and the world doesn't fall apart. And so you say to yourself, see, it didn't matter. But it did, because failure is nothing more than a few small errors in judgment, repeated every day. And success is just as simple, a few simple disciplines, practiced every day. That's the whole difference. So let me ask you plainly, which pain are you willing to carry? Because you can't escape both. You will either pay the small price of discipline now, or you will pay the crushing price of regret later. And in that decision lies your future. That's powerful enough to stop and reflect on by itself. But combine it with what I'm about to share next, and you'll see exactly how to build the right disciplines into your daily life. Even if you're starting from nothing, small steps, faithfully practiced, that can build wealth and freedom from the ground up. That's where we'll go next. Now, once you understand that discipline is lighter than regret, the natural question is, where do I begin? How do I take something so big as wealth, so big as success, and break it down into daily disciplines I can actually do? And here's the secret. You don't begin with the extraordinary. You begin with the ordinary. You don't wait until you can make giant moves. You start with small, deliberate steps, repeated faithfully. Because wealth is not built by chance, and it's not built by dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime actions. Wealth is built by a handful of simple disciplines, practiced every day, until they compound into results too big to miss. So let me give you a few examples. Start with a financial discipline. If I had to start over with nothing, the very first thing I'd do is learn to save a little, no matter how small. $1, $5, $10. The amount doesn't matter at first. What matters is that you prove to yourself you can do it. Because if you can't save a little when you have a little, you'll never save when you have a lot. People say, oh, once I start making more money, then I'll start saving. No, you won't. Because saving isn't about money, it's about philosophy. It's about discipline. And once you prove to yourself you can set something aside, even when times are tight, you've built the foundation of wealth. Next, add a discipline for your mind. Read for 15 minutes a day. That's all. 15 minutes. One chapter. One good idea. Do that for 30 days, and you'll have finished a book. Do it for a year, and you'll have read a dozen. Do it for 5 years, and you'll have built a library. And that library will change your life, because one idea, captured and acted on, can turn everything around. I can't tell you how many times one paragraph, one sentence, one story from a book shifted the way I thought. And because I thought differently, I acted differently, and because I acted differently, my results changed. Then add a discipline for your body. Wealth without health is misery. So start simple. A 10-minute walk, a few stretches. Drink more water, eat a little less sugar, go to bed on time. Nothing dramatic, nothing heroic, just small disciplines that remind your body you care for it. Because your body is the vessel that carries you to your future. And if you neglect it, no amount of money will make up for the loss. And don't forget your spirit and your character. Practice gratitude. Every morning, write down 3 things you're thankful for. That single discipline will shift your outlook, soften your words, brighten your relationships. And gratitude, practiced daily, is a seed that grows into joy and contentment. Without it, even wealth feels empty. With it, even small beginnings feel rich. Now here's the key. Don't try to change everything at once. Pick one or two disciplines and commit to them. Master them. Let them become part of your life. And once they're automatic, add more. Because the danger of trying to do everything at once is that you end up doing nothing at all. But if you start with one and you prove to yourself you can be consistent, you'll discover something powerful: momentum. Momentum is when the habits begin to carry you instead of you carrying them. And once momentum is on your side, it's easier to keep going than to stop. Think of discipline like planting seeds. You don't see the tree on day one. You don't see fruit on day two. But every day you water, every day you tend, every day you protect, something is happening underground. And one day, the sprout breaks through. That's how wealth is built. You plant daily disciplines, faithfully. And though the harvest doesn't come immediately, it is guaranteed. Later, greater, exactly what you planted. So here's my challenge. For the next 30 days, pick one new discipline and practice it without fail. Just one. Save $1. Read 15 minutes. Walk 10 minutes. Write in your journal. Sow kindness. Choose one and keep it faithfully. At the end of 30 days, you'll be amazed not only at the habit you've built, but at the person you've become. Because that's the true reward of discipline. It's not just the habit, it's the identity it gives you. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who can be trusted, someone who keeps promises. And once you see yourself that way, wealth becomes inevitable. Now that's powerful enough on its own, but combine it with the next principle and you'll see why the harvest is always predictable. Because life is governed by a law, the law of sowing and reaping. And if you sow wisely, the harvest will never disappoint you. That's what we'll talk about next. Now here's one of the great truths of life. And once you see it clearly, you'll never be able to deny it again. You reap what you sow. That's the law. Simple, clear, unavoidable. And I call it the law because it never fails. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what you believe. It doesn't care if you understand it or not. The soil doesn't ask questions. It simply gives you back what you put in. If you plant corn, you get corn. If you plant weeds, you get weeds. If you plant nothing, you get nothing. It's that simple. And yet, it's amazing how many people live as though the law didn't exist. They plant excuses and expect success. They plant laziness and expect abundance. They plant neglect and expect progress. And when the harvest comes up empty, they stand in the field and curse the ground, curse the weather, curse their neighbor. When the truth is, the harvest always tells the truth about the seed. Why is this so important to understand if you're starting over with nothing? Because it means you don't need luck. You don't need miracles. You don't need someone to rescue you. All you need is the courage to start planting the right seeds. Because the law guarantees the harvest. It's not maybe. It's not if the stars align. It's not if you were born into the right family. No. The law says you reap later, you reap greater, and you reap exactly what you sow. Think about those three guarantees. First, you always reap later. That's why so many people give up. They plant for a few days, they work hard for a week, they save for a month, and when nothing happens right away, they quit. But the farmer knows better. He knows you don't plant in the morning and harvest in the evening. There's always a season of waiting. There's always a gap between seed and fruit. And that's why patience is part of success. If you can't endure the waiting, you'll never enjoy the harvest. Second, you always reap greater. That's the miracle. Plant one kernel of corn, and you get a stalk with multiple ears, each filled with kernels. Sow one seed, reap many. That's multiplication. And it works for good and for bad. Sow a little discipline, and you reap a harvest of confidence and strength. Sow a little kindness, and you reap friendships and goodwill that bless you for years. Sow a single good idea, and you reap a fortune. But the reverse is true as well. Sow one careless word, and you can reap years of distrust. Sow one small neglect, and you can reap a life of regret. The soil multiplies whatever you give it. That's the power in the warning. Third, you always reap exactly what you sow. You can't plant weeds and harvest wheat. You can't plant excuses and harvest results. You can't plant laziness and reap excellence. The soil doesn't lie. It gives you back what you gave it, multiplied and magnified. And here's the truth. The harvest always exposes the seed. You can fool your boss. You can fool your friends. You can even fool yourself for a while, but you can't fool the soil. If your harvest is poor, it's because your planting was poor. That's the truth. And the sooner you accept it, the sooner you can change it. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a farmer standing by his field in springtime, bag of seed in hand. But instead of planting, he says, I'll wait until I see a harvest. Once the crops come up, then I'll plant. We'd call him foolish, wouldn't we? But that's how most people live their lives. They say, once I get a raise, then I'll start saving. Once I'm successful, then I'll start reading. Once I get respect, then I'll act with integrity. But the law doesn't work that way. First you sow, then you reap. First you plant, then you harvest. That's the order, and you can't change it. And here's the final warning. You cannot change the harvest by complaining. You can stand in the field all day, yelling at the soil, blaming the weather, cursing the seed, but nothing changes. The harvest doesn't respond to words, it responds to work. If you don't like the harvest, don't waste your breath on complaints. Change the seed, change the planting. Change today, and the future will change with it. So let me ask you again, what are you sowing? What seeds are you planting with your time, your words, your money, your habits? Because whether you realize it or not, you're planting every day. And the harvest is inevitable. It's guaranteed. You reap later, you reap greater, and you reap exactly. That's powerful enough on its own, but combine it with what I'm about to share next, and you'll see how to take this law and apply it deliberately in your relationships, your work, your money, your habits, so that instead of drifting into a harvest of regret, you can design a harvest of wealth and freedom. That's where we'll go next. Now that you understand the guarantees of the law, the next step is to ask, how do I apply it, especially if I'm starting from nothing? Because here's the good news. You don't need money to start sowing. You don't need wealth to start planting. You only need seed. And seed comes in many forms. A kind word is seed. A book is seed. An act of service is seed. A dollar saved is seed. A habit repeated is seed. Every day, you carry bags of seed with you, and every choice you make scatters them into the soil of your future. The question is not whether you are sowing, you are. The question is, what are you sowing? Because that will decide your harvest. So let's get practical. If I had to start over today with nothing, here's how I would apply the law. First, I'd sow into relationships. I'd make it a point every day to say a kind word, offer encouragement, express gratitude, and build trust. Because relationships are fertile ground. Sow respect, reap loyalty. Sow service, reap opportunity. Sow value, reap wealth. Too many people neglect this soil, or worse, they poison it with gossip, criticism, and selfishness. Then they wonder why their harvest is loneliness, suspicion, and closed doors. But if you deliberately plant goodwill, you'll be amazed how quickly opportunities sprout. Someone remembers your kindness. Someone opens a door. Someone recommends your name. That's the harvest. Second, I'd sow into learning. Every day, I'd plant seeds in my mind, reading, listening, journaling, because knowledge multiplies. One idea planted today can become a tree of wealth tomorrow. A single concept from a book can inspire a new business. A sentence from a seminar can unlock a breakthrough. That's why I built a library when I had nothing. That's why I carried a journal, because I knew that every page, every thought, every reflection was seed. And the law says, sow study, reap skill. Sow skill, reap opportunity. Sow opportunity, reap wealth. It's guaranteed. Third, I'd sow into small financial habits. If I earned $10, I'd save $1. If I earned 100, I'd save 10. Not because the amount matters at first, but because the habit matters. Saving is seed. Investing is seed. Even if you're starting with pennies, those pennies prove you're a planter. And once you become a planter, the harvest must come. People say, but Jim, I don't have enough to save. Let me tell you the truth. If you can't save $1, you won't save 10. If you can't save 10, you won't save 100. It's not the amount, it's the philosophy. It's the discipline. It's the seed. Fourth, I'd sow into personal habits, how I use my time, how I care for my body, how I speak to myself. Because every choice is seed. Neglect is seed. Excuses are seed. But so is discipline. So is gratitude. So is effort. If you spend 30 days planting nothing but excuses, don't be surprised when your harvest is regret. But if you spend 30 days planting discipline, gratitude, and effort, you'll be amazed at the sprouts of confidence, energy, and progress. And here's what you must remember. The law works both ways. You can't sow weeds and expect wheat. Sow bitterness, reap distance. Sow laziness, reap poverty. Sow neglect, reap regret. The harvest always tells the truth. But that truth is not meant to condemn you. It's meant to free you. Because it means you can start over anytime. You can start sowing new seeds today. And though the harvest won't come instantly, it will come. Later, greater, and exactly. So here's your challenge. For the next 30 days, choose 3 seeds you will sow deliberately. Maybe it's saving $1 a day. Maybe it's reading 15 minutes. Maybe it's 1 act of kindness. Pick 3, plant them daily. And at the end of 30 days, look at the sprouts. You'll see proof that the law works. And once you have that proof, you'll never again doubt that you can build wealth from nothing. Because the soil doesn't lie. The law doesn't fail. Now that's powerful enough to live by on its own, but combine it with what I'm about to share next, the power of goals and vision, and you'll see why even sowing can be wasted if you don't know where you want to go. Because planting without vision leads to scattered crops. But planting with goals creates a harvest worth gathering. And that's where we'll go next. Now, once you understand philosophy, once you've begun the disciplines, once you've started planting good seed, there's another piece of the puzzle. You cannot ignore goals. Because here's the truth. You can work hard. You can sow faithfully. You can even discipline yourself every day. But if you don't have goals, if you don't have a clear design, you'll end up spending your life busy, but not progressing. And let me tell you something I discovered when I was young and broke. Being busy is not the same as being successful. You can run hard all day and still end up in the wrong place if you don't know where you're going. That's why I say wealth must be designed. Without goals, you drift. With goals, you design. And design is always better than drift. I remember when I met my mentor, Earl Schoaf. After listening to me for a while, he asked me a question that cut me right to the core. He said, "Jim, can I see your list of goals?" And I had to admit, I didn't have one. I had vague wishes in my head. I'd like to make more money. I'd like to be healthier. I'd like to travel someday. But nothing written, nothing specific, nothing alive. And he said, "Well then, young man, I can guess your bank balance within a few $100s." And he was right. Because without goals, I was drifting. Without goals, my philosophy had no direction. Without goals, my discipline had no destination. That day I learned a truth that has stayed with me for life. The size of your goals determines the size of your life. If your goals are small, your accomplishments will be small. If your goals are vague, your results will be vague. But if your goals are clear, specific, and compelling, they will pull you forward like magnets. They'll shape your choices, they'll give meaning to your effort, and they'll keep you steady when the winds are against you. Think of the contrast. Most people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they do planning their entire life. They'll research hotels, compare flights, schedule activities, plan every detail of the trip. But when it comes to the next 10, 20, 30 years of their life, they leave it to chance. And then they wonder why they arrive at a destination they never wanted. But the answer is simple. Without goals, you drift. With goals, you design. And here's another truth. The real value of a goal is not what you get, but who you become. If you set a goal to become a millionaire, the $1 million isn't the real prize. The real prize is the person you become in the process. Disciplined, skilled, confident, valuable. Because here's the secret. If you get the money without the growth, you'll lose it. But if you grow into the person who can create wealth, even if you lose it all, you can build it again. That's the real wealth. So let me ask you, do you have your goals written down? Do you have them sharp, clear, on paper? Or are they still floating around in your head, vague and weak? Because here's the truth. Goals not written are only wishes. And wishes don't pull. Wishes don't discipline. Wishes don't inspire. But written goals do. Written goals are powerful. Written goals give shape to your future. That's why goals matter. Because without them, you'll scrape by. With them, you'll design. Without them, you'll drift wherever the wind blows. With them, you'll set your sail and choose your destination. And that's the difference between poverty and wealth, between regret and accomplishment, between an average life and an extraordinary one. Now that's powerful enough to think about on its own. But combine it with what I'm about to share next, and you'll see exactly how to do a September-style reset. A practical way to set goals so clear, so vivid, that they begin to pull you immediately, even if you're starting from nothing. That's where we'll go next. Now, once you understand why goals matter, the next step is to actually set them. And here's where most people fail. They nod their head. They say, yes, I really should set goals. But then they never do the hard, quiet work of sitting down with a sheet of paper and actually writing them. And here's the truth. If you don't write them, they don't exist. Goals not written are nothing but wishes. And wishes don't build wealth. Wishes don't discipline you. Wishes don't pull you. Written goals do. Written goals are magnets. Written goals change how you see the world, how you spend your time, how you measure your effort. And if I had to start from nothing, one of the first things I'd do is this. I'd sit down and reset my goals completely, from the ground up. Here's how I would do it. First, I'd make a long list, 50 to 100 things I want. Everything. Big things, small things, personal things, financial things, physical things, relational things, spiritual things. I'd write it all down. Don't edit, don't filter, don't worry about how. Just write. If you want a new suit, write it. If you want a home for your family, write it. If you want to pay off debt, write it. If you want to travel, write it. If you want to give generously, write it. Empty your head onto paper, because until it's written, it's just a cloud of vague hopes floating around. But once it's written, it's a seed. And seeds, planted, grow. Second, I'd put time frames on each one. I'd ask, is this a 1-year goal, a 3-year goal, a 5-year goal, or a 10-year goal? Some things are quick, you can do them in months. Some take years. Some take decades. That's fine. Don't get discouraged by the long ones. Because if all your goals are short-term, you'll never stretch. And if all your goals are long-term, you'll lose motivation. You need both, something to reach soon for confidence, something to reach later for vision. Third, I'd narrow them down. From the big list, I'd pick the ones that stir me most, maybe 4 from each category. 4 1-year, 4 3-year, 4 5-year, 4 10-year. That gives me 16 to focus on. That's plenty. Don't try to chase everything at once. Pick the ones that ignite your imagination. Fourth, for each goal, I'd write 2 things, what and why. The what sharpens the picture. The why gives it power. Don't just write, I want more money. Write, I want to double my income in 3 years so I can get out of debt, travel with my family, and give generously. Don't just write, I want to be healthy. Write, I want to lose 20 pounds so I can have the energy to play with my kids, the confidence to feel good about myself, and the strength to live long. When the what is clear and the why is strong, the how begins to show up. Now let me give you a story. After the moon landing, many astronauts came home and fell into deep depression. You'd think landing on the moon, the greatest human achievement of the time, would be enough to keep them inspired forever. But it wasn't. Do you know why? Because they had no new goals. They had climbed the highest peak they could imagine, and then there was nothing left to reach for. That's the danger of success without reset. If you don't keep setting new goals, even your greatest accomplishments will feel empty. But if you always have something pulling you forward, life never loses its meaning. So here's your assignment. Do a goal reset. Not tomorrow, not someday, but this week. Take a quiet evening, shut off the noise, and write your list. Make it long, make it messy, make it alive. Then sort it, narrow it, and write your whats and whys. Do that, and you'll already be wealthier than most people, because you'll have a design for your life, not just drift. Now, once your goals are set, there's another truth you need to face. Even with the best goals, the wrong associations can sabotage you. Because if the people around you don't believe in your goals, if they don't share your philosophy, if they don't encourage your disciplines, sooner or later, their influence will pull you back down. That's why the next step in this blueprint is to examine your associations. And that's what we'll talk about next. Now, once your goals are clear, once you've written them down and given them time frames and reasons, there's another question you've got to ask yourself. Who am I walking with? Because here's the truth, no matter how sharp your goals, No matter how strong your philosophy, if you spend your days with the wrong people, their influence will pull you back. You see, wealth is not just about what you do. It's about who you're around while you do it. And the law of averages is real. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, not just in income, but in attitude, in habits, in expectations, in philosophy. Think of it like this. You can take a clean glass of water, pure, refreshing, clear, and drop in just a little dirt. Now, the water doesn't purify the dirt. The dirt pollutes the water. Influence works the same way. You may have clear goals, pure ambitions, good intentions, but if you spend your days with people who laugh at your goals, who complain about life, who sow excuses, who drag their feet, before long, your clarity becomes cloudy. You start to talk like them. You start to think like them. You start to accept their philosophy as your own. And without even realizing it, you've lowered your sail to their level. Now, here's the difficult part. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who limit you the most. They don't mean to. They don't set out to hurt you. But if they don't believe in growth, if they don't value discipline, if they don't dream, then their presence pulls you down. And influence is subtle. No one announces, "I'm about to ruin your philosophy today." No, it's in the little things. The sarcasm when you share an idea. The laughter when you talk about your goals. The endless complaining about how hard things are. And if you don't guard against it, before long you'll be carrying their same excuses, living their same small life. But here's the good news. Just as negative influence can drag you down, positive influence can lift you higher than you ever imagined. Spend time with disciplined people, and suddenly discipline feels normal. Spend time with readers, and you'll want to read. Spend time with dreamers, and your own dreams will expand. Influence works both ways. And this is why I say, if you don't have the right 5 people in your immediate circle, find them in books, in recordings, in seminars. Some of my greatest mentors I never met in person. I met them through their words, their ideas, their teachings, and their influence was just as real as those I spoke to face. So here's what I want you to do. Take inventory of your associations. On one sheet of paper, write down the 5 people you spend the most time with. Look at each one honestly and ask, do they lift me or do they drag me? Do they stretch me or do they shrink me? Do they believe in growth or do they settle for drift? And then make the hard decisions. It doesn't mean you cut people off cold. It doesn't mean you stop loving them. But it does mean you become intentional about your exposure. You spend more time with those who pull you forward, less with those who pull you back, because your future is too important to hand it over to the wrong crowd. Let me remind you, your goals can pull you, your philosophy can guide you, your discipline can strengthen you, but if your associations are wrong, they can undo it all. On the other hand, if your associations are right, they can multiply everything you're working for. That's why you must choose carefully. Who you walk with in this season decides where you arrive in the next. Now that's powerful enough to act on right away. But combine it with the next principle, and you'll see why wealth is never just about making money. It's about becoming more valuable. And the way you do that is not just by working harder on your job, it's by working harder on yourself. That's the value of self-education. And that's what we'll talk about next. Now let me tell you something that changed my life when I was young and broke. Formal education can make you a living, but self-education can make you a fortune. And when I say fortune, I don't just mean money, although money is certainly part of it. I mean a fortune in wisdom, a fortune in confidence, a fortune in influence, a fortune in the richness of your life. A diploma can get you a job, but it won't guarantee you wealth, and it won't guarantee you freedom. For that, you need to go beyond the classroom. You need to decide that you'll be a lifelong student, not of a school system, but of life itself. That's what I discovered when I was 25 years old, standing in my tiny apartment, broke, with nothing but excuses. Here's the story. One evening, a Girl Scout came to my door selling cookies, just $2 for the box. And when she asked if I wanted to buy some, I froze. I didn't have the money. I was broke and too embarrassed to admit it. So I lied. I told her I already bought some. She thanked me and walked away, and I closed the door and sat down on my couch, crushed. A grown man lying to a little girl because he didn't have $2 in his pocket. That was the night I decided things had to change. And not just on the outside, they had to change on the inside. That was the night I decided to work harder on myself than I did on my job. Because it hit me, if I didn't change, nothing would change. If I didn't grow, nothing would grow. So I started with books. I started with journals. I started collecting ideas, writing them down, reflecting on them. And little by little, those ideas reshaped my philosophy, sharpened my discipline, and changed my results. One idea, one sentence, one story can alter the course of your entire life. That's why I built a library when I had nothing. That's why I carried a journal everywhere I went. Because I didn't know which idea would be the one to change everything, and I didn't want to miss it. Here's what you've got to understand. Money doesn't produce value. Value produces money. And the more valuable you become, the more opportunities come your way. How do you become valuable? By learning, by growing, by building skills, developing wisdom, and capturing ideas. The marketplace doesn't reward effort alone, it rewards value. And value comes from self-education. So here's my challenge. Make September your learning month. Read a book that stretches you. Listen to a program that inspires you. Write in a journal every day. Capture ideas before they slip away. Because ideas are slippery. You think you'll remember them, but you won't. Trap them on paper, and they become part of your permanent library. Fill that library, and it will pay dividends for the rest of your life. And don't fall for the excuse that learning costs too much. A book might cost $10, but the right book could make you 10,000. A seminar might cost a few hundred, but the insights you gain could multiply your income for years. Ignorance is what's expensive. Ignorance is what costs you opportunities, costs you relationships, costs you freedom. Self-education is not an expense. It's an investment, and the return is unlimited. So make the commitment today. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. If I had to start over with nothing, this is one of the first things I'd do. Because once you change yourself, you change everything else. Now that's powerful enough to live by on its own. But combine it with everything we've covered: philosophy, discipline, sowing and reaping, goals, associations, and self-education, and you've got a blueprint. A clear plan for how to build wealth from nothing. And that's what I want to share with you next. The complete blueprint for starting over and building again. So now we've walked through the pieces: philosophy, discipline, sowing and reaping, goals, associations, and self-education. Each one is powerful on its own. But when you bring them together, you have a complete blueprint. And this is the blueprint I would use if I had to start all over today. If I lost every dollar, every possession, every advantage, and had to begin again from nothing. And the good news is, it's the very same blueprint you can use. Because it doesn't require luck, it doesn't require privilege, it doesn't require miracles. It requires principles. And principles work for anyone who applies them. First, I would reset my philosophy. I'd tear up the excuse list. I'd stop blaming the wind and start setting my sail. I'd remind myself daily that the same winds blow on us all, and that it's not circumstances, but my philosophy that determines my direction. Without that shift, nothing else matters. With it, everything else becomes possible. Second, I would build one daily discipline. Not 10, not 20, just one. Maybe saving $1 a day. Maybe reading 15 minutes. Maybe journaling. The point is not the size of the discipline, but the consistency of it. Because the first proof I'd need if I was starting over is the proof that I can keep a promise to myself. That proof is priceless. Once you know you can do one discipline, you know you can do more. And once you've got momentum, discipline begins to carry you instead of you carrying it. Third, I would sow deliberately. I'd look at my days and ask, what am I planting? And I'd make sure to plant kindness, to plant service, to plant learning, to plant value. Because I know the law: you reap later, you reap greater, and you reap exactly what you sow. And if I want a harvest of opportunity, wealth, and freedom, I must sow the seeds today. Fourth, I would write my goals. Not vague wishes, not someday dreams, but specific written goals. I'd fill a page with everything I want: short-term, long-term, big and small. I'd assign time frames. I'd choose the most important. And for each, I'd write the what and the why. Because when the what is clear and the why is strong, the how will begin to appear. Fifth, I would evaluate my associations. I'd ask myself, Who am I spending time with? Are they lifting me or dragging me? Are they stretching me or shrinking me? And I'd make the hard decisions. I'd spend less time with those who poison my well, more with those who refresh it. And if I couldn't find those people in person, I'd find them in books, in recordings, in ideas. Because I know the truth, you become the average of your five. And if I'm starting over, I can't afford to walk with the wrong crowd. Sixth, I would commit to self-education. I'd read, I'd listen, I'd learn, I'd capture ideas, I'd build a library, even if it began with just one book. Because I know that my value to the marketplace is not in how hard I work, but in how much wisdom I carry, how much skill I develop, how much I grow. Formal education can make you a living. Self-education can make you a fortune. And when you put all of this together, you have a plan. A simple, practical, proven plan for building wealth from nothing. Reset your philosophy. Build one discipline. Sow deliberately. Write your goals. Guard your associations. Feed your mind. Do these 6 things faithfully, and the results will follow. Not instantly, but inevitably. Because the harvest always comes. Now think of it like a rocket launch. The hardest part is liftoff. Most of the fuel is burned just to break free from gravity. But once you're free, once momentum takes over, it's easier to keep going than to stop. That's what this blueprint does. It gives you the liftoff. It breaks you free from the pull of excuses, of neglect, of drift. And once you're free, the pull of philosophy, discipline, goals, and growth will carry you forward. So if I had to start over, this is what I'd do. And it's what you can do too. Don't wait for conditions. Don't wait for luck. Don't wait for someone to rescue you. Take this blueprint and begin today. Because the best time to reset your sail, to plant your seeds, to write your goals, to choose your friends, to read your book is now. So now we've come to the end of this journey, and I want you to pause with me for a moment. We've walked through the blueprint philosophy, discipline, sowing and reaping, goals, associations, and self-education. Simple ideas, timeless ideas, proven ideas. And yet, these simple ideas are the difference between living a life of quiet desperation and living a life of abundance and freedom. You see, success is not hidden, it's not mysterious, and it's not reserved for the lucky few. Success is simply a handful of principles, practiced daily, faithfully, persistently, until they compound into results so large, people look at you and say, I don't even recognize you anymore. That's the truth. That's the promise. And it all begins with you. Remember, I started at 25 with nothing to my name. I was broke, behind on my promises, ashamed of my situation. I had excuses. I had complaints. I had a list a mile long of why I wasn't doing well. But excuses don't build wealth. Complaints don't sow seeds. Blame doesn't change the harvest. The day my life turned around was the day I took responsibility. The day I tore up my excuse list and wrote down one word, me. That was the day I realized if I changed, everything else could change. And if I didn't, nothing would. That's where wealth begins, not in money, but in philosophy. And from there, it's discipline, the bridge, the small daily actions that weigh ounces in the moment, but prevent the tons of regret later. It's sowing and reaping, the law that never fails, that guarantees you will always harvest what you plant, later, greater, and exactly. It's goals, the magnets that pull you out of drift and into design. It's associations, the 5 people around you shaping your future whether you admit it or not. It's self-education, the decision to work harder on yourself than you do on your job because your value determines your reward. That's the blueprint. That's how you start over. That's how you build wealth from nothing. But let me warn you, agreement is not enough. Nodding your head is not enough. Taking notes is not enough. The blueprint only works if you build. Knowledge doesn't change anything until it is applied. You've got to write your goals. You've got to plant your seeds. You've got to practice your discipline. You've got to choose your friends. You've got to read your book. You've got to pick up your journal. You've got to do it. And you've got to start today. Because the harvest you want tomorrow depends on the seed you plant today. And today is all you have. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for more money. Don't wait for a new year. Don't wait for someone to rescue you. Start with what you've got, where you are, right now. Because you already have what you need, ideas, choices, time, and responsibility. That's seed. And if you plant it faithfully, wealth will come. It must come. Because the law never fails. So let me leave you with this challenge. Take this blueprint seriously. Apply it. Prove it to yourself. And 30 days from now, 60 days from now, a year from now, you'll look back and say, that was the turning point. That was when I started over. That was when everything began to change. And that proof will be yours forever. Because once you've changed once, you know you can change again. Once you've built once, you know you can build again. And that freedom, the freedom to start over any time with nothing and build something extraordinary, that's true wealth. And when you've taken this step, don't stop. Because life doesn't just come in days and months. Life comes in seasons. Winter always comes. But so does spring. Summer requires labor. And fall always brings accountability. If you learn how to live in rhythm with the seasons, you'll never again be surprised. You'll never again be unprepared. You'll know how to plant in spring, protect in summer, harvest in fall, and endure in winter. That's the next step. So click through, join me there, and let's keep building together. Because the best path to wealth, the best path to success is not behind you. It's not waiting for luck. It's not hiding in chance. It's right in front of you, and it begins now.